Et bonsoir à tous, on se retrouve pour une deuxième vidéo aujourd'hui parce qu'on a du gameplay de Stellar Blade qui se nomme, attention, Sekiro, rencontre, NieR, Automata. Ça fait grave envie, hein, un titre comme ça, c'est clair et net. Donc on a 6 minutes 30 de gameplay, ça va aller assez vite. Je nous ai mis une traduction française, celle de YouTube, hein, donc je sais pas trop ce que ça va donner. En tout cas, on va découvrir ici du coup des nouvelles images qui sont en exclusivité sur IGN. Je vous mets le lien directement en description si vous voulez voir la vidéo sans moi. C'est avec Stellar Blade, c'est un jeu que j'attends énormément. J'ai vraiment très envie de le tester. Et ben c'est parti, on va découvrir ce nouveau gameplay ensemble. Let's go.
If stylously wielding a sword as an anime-style female warrior traversing a post-apocalyptic world left behind by its inhabitants sounds anything like NieR Automata, well, that's because Stellar Blade director Kim Hyung-tae was directly inspired by Square Enix's 2017 hit. I'm probably not the only one who imagined Stellar Blade would play similarly to NieR Automata as well, a stylish but casual action game that allows you to beat the crap out of your enemies without too much stress. However, from the moment I got the hold of the controller, I realized that I was gonna have a much more nerve-wracking experience than I expected, but in the best possible way. Stellar Blade puts a much bigger emphasis on defensive skills than I would have thought. Reading the timing of enemy attacks for well-timed parries and dodges is almost as important as it was in Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Parrying multiple attacks to disrupt your enemy's balance allows you to perform a special attack called
Des esquives et des contres parfaits.
Besides your regular dodge mechanic, Stellar Blade
Les animations
introduces
sont
blink
vraiment
and
chouettes, hein, j'aime
repulse.
beaucoup.
Both are dodging skills that counter the enemy's attack, but they can only be used against specific attacks. Blink is utilized by pressing the circle button and moving the analog stick forward simultaneously, while repulse requires you to press circle and move backwards. At first it can be challenging to instantly know and react to an enemy attack that can be countered by
On a la démo qui sort bientôt.
Once you get the hang of it, parrying and dodging a series of attacks only to deliver a devastating counter-attack at the end feels incredible. It makes you realize just how much Stellar Blade rewards the time you take to learn attack patterns. In games that put a high emphasis on parrying and dodging, I often find myself playing a bit too defensively. Thanks to a great set of offensive tools, I didn't have the same problem with Stellar Blade. Beta skills, which can be utilized once your gauge is full, can cancel an enemy's attack if the timing is right. There's also an attack that allows you to quickly get close to the enemy after dodging from a distance. Delivering a series of attacks with the square and triangle buttons, cancelling your enemy's attack with a well-timed beta skill, only to finish them off with yet another combo, can feel just as great as the parrying and dodging. Stellar Blade equally provides the player with both great defensive and offensive skills, which makes it feel balanced and deep. Being able to take different strategies depending on the enemy type is great in itself, but it feels like Stellar Blade has enough depth and variety for players to find their own unique style to tackle the challenging combat. At a certain point in the game, Eve will become able to use a long-range gun-type weapon as well. While melee combat remains the main focus, some instances require the use of your gun in order to advance, and apparently some stages are designed for this weapon, but I didn't get to play any of those. I did get to use the gun in a fight against Stalker, one of Stellar Blade's creepy bosses. By successfully countering a specific attack with repulse, a weak spot is unveiled next to Stalker's head. Heavy damage can be dealt if you are quick enough to fire at this weak spot. I also found myself relying on the gun whenever I was out of potions, as attacking from a distance wasn't nearly as risky as attacking with my blade. At the very least, the gun should function as yet another option in Stellar Blade's already robust combat. The bosses I got to fight all had a wide array of attack patterns that fundamentally changed once they headed into a different phase. While overwhelming at first, after a few tries I realized how the attacks were designed for me to utilize the parrying, dodging and other skills that Stellar Blade had taught me at that point. Stellar Blade has two difficulty settings, normal mode and story mode. While calling it a Souls-like would make it sound more difficult than it actually is, in normal mode, regular enemies can kill you if you let your guard down. On my first few attempts, bosses felt quite challenging as well. From a game design perspective, Stellar Blade does draw a lot of inspiration from the Soulsborne genre. Camps feel just like bonfire checkpoints. You can unlock shortcuts to take you back to those checkpoints and be prepared for surprise attacks from enemies placed just around the corner. When playing in story mode, the game feels a lot more forgiving, and you can turn on an accessibility option called Action Assist that tells you the right timing for parrying and dodging in QTE fashion. I like that camps don't just function as a place that restores your health and refills your potions, but provides some actual relaxation for Eve and the player. Watching Eve kick back on her chair while playing your choice of song on the record player is a good way to take a break. At these camps, Eve occasionally has conversations with her friends, and the game can reward you with flashbacks and other events. Some events only occur at specific camps, so finding all the camps functions as a nice extra for completionists or those who want to dig deeper into Stellar Blade's world and characters. You can buy items and learn new skills at camps as well. Newly obtained skills can be tried out in the game's training room, but even if you don't, Stellar Blade will remind you of that skill during the next combat session in the main game. Stellar Blade has many small details like this that make me feel like I was being taken great care of. For example, whenever the beta skill gauge is full, the game's UI will notify you of this. While it might sound like an afterthought, for someone who often gets caught up in the action and forgets to look at the gauge like me, it goes a long way. While Stellar Blade is combat focused, I experienced some simple puzzles and platforming as well. Entering a code in order to open a door was so straightforward that I didn't even feel bad to refer to the hint feature. While not particularly spectacular, platforming sessions like moving wooden boards on a water surface by swimming to then climb on them and jump to a nearby ladder were decent enough to provide some welcome variety. Speaking of swimming, Eve can swim underwater as well, which I found somewhat rare for a combat-focused action game like Stellar Blade. In typical video game fashion, swimming to the bottom of the water rewarded me with a treasure chest.
C'est vraiment complet, hein.
What
Je
else
pensais
would
pas
you
qu'on
expect?
pourrait aller sous l'eau et tout.
While mostly linear, the stage I got to play was wide enough for a few detours with other hidden treasure chests and optional enemies. I got the impression that Stellar Blade takes exploration seriously as well, at least for an action game. In the main game, players can explore a city called Zion, as well as some less linear areas. While the depth of its exploration remains to be seen, Stellar Blade's action alone was more than enough for me to get excited for its April
J'avais pas vu
26th
qu'il y avait
release.
le petit icône là depuis tout à l'heure. Pardon, le petit truc là. Je viens juste de le capter. J'espère qu'il vous a pas trop fait chier.
On
Attends, on est vraiment à
PlayStation
la fin.
5.
Yes.
For more
Oh bah voilà. C'est vraiment la fin de la fin. Je sais pas ce que vous en pensez, mais moi, plus on approche de la sortie, plus j'ai envie de le tester ce jeu. Bon, j'ai hâte de faire la démo, c'est clair et net, mais il y a une sorte de, je sais pas, de patte un petit peu différente des jeux habituels. Je sais pas, le personnage déjà très sympa. Bon, après oui, c'est vrai que c'est assez centré sur le charme, ça pourrait en rebuter certains. On a une sorte de mélange, ouais, Souls, mais assez léger, qui va nous permettre de faire, je pense, un peu des contres, des combos, des esquives plus facilement que dans ce type de jeu habituel. Donc je pense que ça va être vraiment pur plaisir quoi, de jouer à ça. Là où Rise of the Ronin m'inspirait pas trop, et franchement je l'ai testé vite fait, hein. J'ai dû jouer 3 heures quoi, dessus. J'ai pas du tout accroché. Celui-ci, je le sens plutôt sympa. Enfin, je le sens bien. Voilà, Rise of the Ronin, je le sentais pas et j'ai vraiment pas aimé. Lui, je le sens bien. N'hésitez pas à donner votre avis, bien entendu. Et rendez-vous le 26 avril pour la date de sortie du jeu. N'oubliez pas, petit abonnement, petit pouce bleu si c'est pas déjà fait. Et je vous dis à très vite dans une prochaine vidéo. A plus, ciao.